Hi, everyone. Welcome to Common Sense Explains, a space where we talk to experts at Common Sense Media and friends of the organization to get a better understanding of what's happening in the world of media and tech and how that impacts families and kids. I am your host, Lorena Taboas. We recently released a new report that evaluates the privacy policies of the most popular virtual reality headsets on the market. And I'm going to talk all about it with the head of our privacy program, Gerard Kelly. Welcome, Gerard. You are essentially the person who reads through privacy policies of all the different apps and devices. And honestly, the best part is that you actually understand what they mean, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what it is that you do at Common Sense Media.
So at Common Sense, we try to help parents, educators, consumers, really anyone who cares about privacy to learn what their favorite apps and their favorite devices like VR and other devices use their data, how they collect data, how they use that maybe for advertising practices or selling data. So we really try to dig in deep, read all the privacy policies and summarize that into different icons and scores to help folks make informed decisions for themselves and for their kids, and even in the classroom for students about privacy.
Before we get into the findings of this new report, can you kind of set the stage for what is happening right now with VR devices? We're hearing a ton about the metaverse and all these huge tech companies investing in real estate within this very new virtual world that you can really only access if you have a VR device, a VR headset. So why was it so important for you to do this analysis right now?
To set the stage, VR is exploding. As you mentioned, Meta pouring billions into the space, lots of other companies putting out headsets aimed at consumers, but also used by teens and kids in this new immersive environments where they're playing games, they're chatting. And so we're seeing over the last couple of years that this space is really exploding, not just in terms of investment, but in terms of adoption. We're seeing a lot of folks use these devices, especially in homes where parents are using these devices with kids, or even in the classroom as educators are thinking about incorporating these devices into computer labs or esports programs. So I think a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, a lot of adoption in this space. So we really wanted to get ahead of the curve. I mean, this is a really, I think, critical moment in our history where we should demand better privacy practices from these devices because this is an opportunity to shape what privacy means in the metaverse for all of us.
So there's a few things that this report reveals, but really the main finding of the analysis is that not a single virtual reality headset tested has earned our recommendation for kids and teens. I mean, that's obviously like what you just talked about. That's a disappointment for people and even parents who have been really looking forward to the development of the metaverse. You analyzed the top 7 virtual reality headsets in the market right now, and all of them fell short. Why was that?
And so when we looked at these headsets, we looked at other research, we looked at other studies to see what people were looking at when it came to privacy in VR. And we really didn't see a comprehensive look at not only the privacy policies of these devices that tell you what data is collected, how it's used, but actually getting their hands on the devices, looking at how the data is sent and where's it sent to. So we really wanted this comprehensive approach to figure out what's really going on, but also offer solutions for folks when it comes to settings, for example, how to opt in or opt out of other settings to protect their privacy if they already own these devices. All of the devices that we rated, their privacy policies say that they can use the data for targeted advertisements, for example, for selling data with third parties. And then we looked at the devices themselves and where that data is sent. And we saw that all of these devices are sending data to known third-party trackers, which can use your data in other ways, in other commercial purposes. And so we really can't recommend these devices because they're not respecting the privacy of their users.
So I guess with all that in mind, I mean, what's your response to the people who say, we already have a ton of devices in our house that capture our data? We have cell phones, we have tablets, smart home speakers, smart doorbells. I mean, we practically live in like a tech jungle. So what's the big deal with adding one more? Why is it that we should avoid virtual reality devices in particular?
I don't think folks realize that a user's movements in VR are tracked over 100 times a second. So that means more than 30 minutes or an hour in VR can generate millions of data points about you that are used to profile, your preferences, your characteristics. And a lot of these interactions in immersive environments, especially with kids and teens, these are automatic, right? You're not necessarily thinking about these interactions. And so they, in a sense, betray our innermost thoughts and feelings, right? That are private, that we're having in these environments. And so I think a lot of folks don't realize just exponentially more data is collected about these devices than any other type of technology they currently use.
I mean, obviously, as a parent, that's like really scary to hear. I mean, I have a 7-year-old son who is, of course, obviously obsessed with playing Minecraft, and he becomes, completely like entranced when he's on his iPad, when he's playing. And sometimes, like any other parent, it worries me, what kind of effects is the screen having on his eyes, his brain? I mean, VR headsets are like on a whole other playing field. Do we know what kind of physiological or even, I guess, psychological dangers VR devices have on our kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of folks, when they think about the physical risks, when I was testing these devices, I ran straight into a wall because it's so easy to not be aware of your physical surroundings because you're in this immersive 3 environment. But unlike a mobile device or Minecraft, you're putting this screen an inch or two from your eyes, right? And so over prolonged use, that can lead to eye strain, that can lead to dizziness, and I think a lot of folks don't realize that because these devices collect so much information about us, all this data can be used to profile a child or a teen or consumers to learn, how they move, what they interact with, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. And over time, all this data can be used to persuade. This information, this really sensitive, intimate information, can be used to manipulate users to feel certain ways about maybe certain characters or certain brands or certain companies, and to make purchases not just in VR but outside VR as well. I don't think folks realize that all of this data that's collected in VR follows you outside of VR. So when you move to a mobile app or you move to a website or another service, all that data is used to profile you, to target you with other commercial messages, emails and target ads and whatnot. And so I think all of this is something, as we think about what parents can do, there are a lot of settings, a lot of controls that these devices offer that you can change what data is collected and how it's used.
So obviously, as you can all tell, Gerard is our go-to expert for analyzing privacy policies. And while he really, really loves reading them, most of us do not, of course. And that's why we have you to explain it to us. But most of us at home, we just click accept when they pop up on our screen, right? So what exactly is it that we're signing away when we do that? Let me explain. You can spot the words privacy policy on nearly every website or app you use, but these policies have a lot more to do with the data they're collecting about you than actual privacy. They're essentially required so companies can inform you what personal info they're collecting, handling, and processing. Some examples of personal information collected by companies include really basic information like a user's name, their address, and phone number. But these companies can also track your location, read your emails, and sift through your browsing history, all because you clicked accept on a privacy policy that you probably did not even read. Consumers need to know all this because not only is their personal data being collected, it is also being sold to advertisers and data brokers, which means now they can bombard you with targeted ads based on all the things they now know about you. It doesn't help that these disclaimers are almost impossible to understand. They are sometimes thousands of words long and use legal terms that the majority of consumers do not know. So, Gerard, a privacy policy is essentially telling us what's happening to our data, but they're also able to collect a ton of information about our kids. Is that different from what they're collecting about us?
When we look at these privacy policies for this research, we found that even though these devices are not necessarily intended for kids, we know they're being used by kids. We talk to parents, we talk to educators who are thinking of using this in K-12 classrooms. But these privacy policies don't actually say how they protect kids. That's really worrisome when these policies are pretty clear about maybe how they monetize the data of other users, adults or consumers who use these devices. But these companies should really go even further and say when kids or teens are using these devices, their data is hands off. It shouldn't be used for third-party marketing or target advertising or selling to to data brokers.
So you already mentioned that there are privacy settings, parental controls to kind of minimize the amount of data that's collected when kids are using these devices. But why are those sometimes not that effective?
So there are settings and controls, but as our research showed, clearly not enough. Even some of the controls that are offered are not enough to stop some of that data collection that we mentioned and use for target ads or data broker purposes. And to go even further, I think a lot of folks don't realize that changing the settings or the controls on your VR device is the first step. For every app you use in VR, for every different experience, you also have to look at those settings as well. And so I think that puts, unfortunately, a lot of onus on the parents, on consumers, on adults to monitor all these settings, which unfortunately change all the time. With every new update to your device or every new update to an app, these settings and menus can move. And so it's really difficult to stay on top of all of these controls and settings.
So, I mean, I think you said it perfectly. The burden really should not be on the parents. So what exactly is it that the industry can do to change this?
I think first and foremost, we need to think about what privacy means in VR, right? So that means thinking about data minimization from the start. That these devices shouldn't be collecting every single data point because they can. These devices should be only collecting the data that's required to use the service. When it comes to kids and teens, as I mentioned earlier, these groups are especially vulnerable to all these different data collection and uses for commercial purposes. Their data should be hands off. And when any child or teen user is using these devices, they should be protected with a higher level of privacy. Companies need to be more transparent, as I mentioned, in their policies about how they protect kids and teens. And right now, these policies are not good when it comes to explaining how their data is used for different purposes. But I think we also need to make our voices heard by policymakers as well, right. Not just the industry, that we need stronger privacy laws. We need regulations in this space because, as you mentioned, it's exploding really quickly. The VR market and augmented reality as well is expected to go into more classrooms, go into more homes, and be used by more people. So I think all of these are ways that parents can both monitor the use of these devices by kids and teens, but also adults and consumers, can advocate for stronger privacy with these devices.
Thanks so much, Gerard, for taking us through this report, which all of you can find linked in our episode description. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to hear from other common sense experts on all the media and tech topics you need to know about. Until next time.